Hello and welcome to Invested in Wellness. I'm Jessie, Sarafian. I'm super excited for today's show. Before we dive into the discussion and I introduce our special guests, I want to remind everyone that we are all unique, have different needs, and to speak to a doctor or medical professional surrounding your mental health. So today is a special episode on men's health featuring Ramond Phipps, Program Manager for Young's Men's Health at Movember, and my co-host Paul Aulicino, Portfolio Strategist at Fidelity. We will discuss the impact of sports on men's mental health and learn how Movember is driving the change in the lives of young men around the world. So first, Ramon, welcome to our show.
Jessie, Paul, and the Fidelity team, thank you so much for having me. Myself and Movember are very excited to be here today and engage in a very thoughtful discussion, of course, in regard to the subject matter.
Great. Well, we're super excited to have you. So for our viewers who are meeting you for the first time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what Movember is and your role there?
Yeah, of course. A lot of people know Movember for our outlandish mustaches, commonly that are grown throughout the month of November. And this has always been a huge staple for the brand and the organization. But many people don't know that Movember has a 20-year history of being a global charity leader in men's health. Now, what that means is that throughout the last 20 years, so I'm even dating myself here, there has been an immense amount of advocacy and fundraising from our global community towards the focuses of testicular and prostate cancer and helping men be able to achieve that preventative health outcome of not dying too young. And of course, focusing on their health in much more thoughtful and the dialed in ways in which we can start to look at how can we prevent individuals from, dying early because we are not taking care of our health as men across the globe. That being said, the newer focus from November going into this amazing new year is our young men's health portfolio, which I am overseeing the implementation of here in Canada, which is another thoughtful focus into how we can start looking at youth in particular and the core focuses of what might be affecting our generation. So more to come on that conversational piece. When I think about myself in relationship to Movember, I have joined the organization in the last 4 months, and it's been a fun ride so far. I have a history of being a mental health and addictions counselor. I've worked in crisis systems planning for our amazing GTA region over here, the Greater Toronto region. I've worked in community development fields along the scope of mental health as well. And all of that being said, I still have found the time to be a breathwork facilitator. I say this all to say that I've been always attached to wellness and mental health in my professional career, and it's something that has driven me towards this new goal of Movember's and aligning myself to helping this cause, because our younger generation is our future, and where we can start to impact the lives of those young individuals who may not know about the health concerns that may be impacting them, but are ready to receive the appropriate message in very interesting ways, we can start to actually curb the outcomes of what might be affecting our current population in ways that we never even thought imaginable.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you for continuing to do what you do at Movember. So now I want you to introduce my colleague, Paul. Paul, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me here, Jessie.
Yeah, so can you share what you do at Fidelity and how you got involved with Movember?
Yeah, for sure. So high level here at Fidelity, I'm one of the portfolio strategists. I meet with financial advisors on a daily basis to really take a deeper look under the hood of their portfolios or consult on portfolio construction and model portfolio development. Separately, in terms of Movember involvement, probably back about 4 or 5 years ago, a cousin and I started fundraising for Movember. We had some family members at that time who were recently diagnosed with cancer, and we thought it'd be nice to raise some awareness in support of them. Then actually, just over 2 years ago now, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer myself. So the cause hit a little bit closer to home. It was easier to grow the mustaches every November. So I tried to continue raising awareness, and I just try to remind men in my lives, as also men in other people's lives, to just check themselves regularly to get ahead of a lot of this and deal with it as quick as you can.
That's great. So thank you so much for sharing your story, Paul. So today we're chatting about the impact of sports on men's mental health. Ramon, what inspired Movember to focus on this through the Sport Health Initiative? And what specific challenges in men's and youth mental health are you aiming to address?
Well, besides the fact of the matter being the youth will one day be our future leaders of our country, future leaders of certain initiatives that are going to advocate for the overall health potential of the human race. When we look at the younger demographic, and I'm going to say specific to Canada, although this is a worldwide demographic, that statistical focus that can be applied in a lot of different locations. When we look at Canada, young men are in crisis. Between the ages of 12 to 25 years old, the second leading cause of mortality is unfortunately suicide. And this is something that predominantly does impact young male audiences. Now, of course, what actually drives this behavior? Many things, higher risk taking predispositions for younger male audiences, and of course, even the stigmatic context of what it means to be a man is unfortunately taught to individuals in very poor ways, in ways that create unhealthy attitudes and perceptions as towards how one should focus on their emotions and how we express that. Oftentimes, this leads to men or young men not learning how to appropriately express their emotions, to seek help, and in order to find that help to one day overcome these problematic health outcomes, such as the mortality of ending your own life. We need to be able to change that way of thinking. With this focus of Movember, right where we currently are in our young men's health portfolio, one of our biggest initiatives in themselves is our sport health initiative. Our sport health initiative is meant to act as a vehicle of change by utilizing an area of focus in our society and our communities that we're all interested in. I mean, we're all sports fans in some capacity, probably. Maybe you grew up playing sports, maybe you grew up watching sports, maybe you've been a believer for the last 50 years of your life. Whatever that may mean for you, in some way, shape, or form, so you have touched sports, even recreationally during school. And sports is something that can actually act as a huge enabler towards great physical health outcomes, but it could also act as a great enabler towards positive mental health outcomes. We need to also look at ways that we can utilize that vehicle to incorporate programmatic initiatives that can actually help youth from a very young age while they're engaged in this whole aspect of play throughout their life. Oftentimes, sports can actually create very unhealthy cultures as well too. A hyper demand and a pressure on how one should perform and what that may lead to for your overall prospects for the remainder of your life. For example, trying to gain a scholarship in order to pursue post-secondary studies, or maybe that's a career that your parents are pushing you towards as a young individual to be the next star Ronaldo soccer player in the world. All of this in itself is a very unfortunate circumstance that a lot of kids across Canada face. And if we don't see how sports could also act as an enabler towards poor health outcomes, then we're never going to be able to utilize that vehicle as a vehicle of change that can actually help individuals across our country in many different ways and aspects.
Yeah, no, that's so important. So what are some of the key barriers young men's face when it comes to addressing mental health support, and how does the Sport Health Initiative help to overcome these obstacles?
Yeah, barrier wise, I mean, I think about this every day, and I think about my own personal experiences as growing up as a career athlete myself. My sports in particular, when I was growing up, I used to be a wrestler, a grappler. I used to love jujitsu, judo, and boxing. And I had two coaches growing up. One coach taught me the good old tried and true intimidation, grit, and toughness. But that also led to very problematic workouts, such as fireman carrying your teammates up 7 flights of stairs in order to grow that grit and toughness. And then I had another coach. She taught me vulnerability, self-awareness, and insight in order to help cultivate leadership potential, which eventually led to me actually growing into a team lead and a coach for my high school wrestling team. And the reason why I point these two out is because they taught me completely different things, and oftentimes they were at odds with each other because one coach thought the other coach was making us weak in some capacity. And I never really understood that as a kid. And then combine that on with the cultural dispositions of where you may come from. You know, I grew up in an environment where to be a man was to be stoic, to repress your emotions, to never show anything that in any way, shape, or form could be seen as weakness. And oftentimes that means not being your truest vulnerable self with the people around you, meaning that if I'm not feeling okay, I'm not willing to say that to the people around me because I'm shameful at the idea of somebody looking down at me or seeing me as weak and vulnerable. Like, this stigmatic belief in itself is the reason why young men have this predisposition towards higher risk-taking behaviors, repressing their emotions, and having poor emotional regulation skills later on down in life. Now, where we try to combat this with the Sports Health Initiative is we recognize that sport environments are an area where we gain the most camaraderie. We practice and we start to cultivate the attitudes of teamwork, of fellowship, of coming together towards a common goal. Like all of these good things that are actually amazing positive traits that do align themselves with masculinity can be highlighted as strengths. So then how can we add more on top of that? Well, we can now utilize this focus of sports to start incorporating mental health literacy aspects in which people can learn a lot more about themselves through practices of self-awareness and care for each other in much more supportive and psychologically safe environments so that sports stops becoming an area that's only dedicated towards performance building. We can use this to build our positive mental health in, again, different ways that we've never thought imaginable at first.
Yeah, I'd say it's I would definitely echo a lot of the comments that you made in terms of historically speaking, it's the way you've got to be a man is to tough it out. And I think I value a lot of that. Like, my grandparents came here from Italy on a boat, and they had to be tough in that time to get through that, I'd say. But at the same time, I think what we have to understand, especially with mental health, uh, it's hard to understand what a person's going through or truly going through until you yourself experience something similar, or you see someone, a loved one, going through something. I know for myself, I never really understood mental health, depression and anxiety, for example. I didn't really understand it until a very close family member of mine was going through it, and it's definitely eye-opening. And the main thing that I took from that experience, and I always try to share, is try your best never to bottle anything up and try to get support as early as you can, because things can snowball very fast and become challenging to get through otherwise. I'd say for myself, I look at my group of friends, each one of us are pretty open with each other, and we'll always be talking about a challenge that we're going through. And odds are, when I'm going through something, someone else probably is in my circle as well. So we generally would find that it shows more strength to figure out a way to power through something than holding back oftentimes. But that's generally my take on that subject. A question more related to the topic here in terms of sports. How can coaches, parents, community leaders as well get involved with Movember's Sports Health Initiative? What role can they play in promoting mental wellness through sports?
Yeah, I truly believe that coaches, leaders, parents, they play the biggest role towards allowing sports to be a area where growth towards our own mental health can actually happen. Coaches are enablers. They enable attitudes, they enable ideologies, they enable cultures and conditions within their sporting institutions for children to participate in. For some children, they can look forward to playing in sports. For other children, they're looking forward to performance-only conditions that need to be met within their actual sporting environment. And that's different depending on the coach. A coach could allow this particular type of programming to be in place because they see value in it, or a coach could disallow this, right? They are the true enablers when it comes to their sporting institutions. Likewise, parents in themselves can actually be individuals that can help promote this type of idea that we need to better the mental health of our youth, or they could push back against that. And oftentimes when we're talking about programmatic initiatives that have to do with mental health in particular as a preventative healthcare approach, it comes down to our community members, the people that are operating positions of leaderships in various institutions such as sporting institutions, for them to say yes or for them to say no. I mean, myself and the researchers and the other healthcare professionals can sit in our rooms, our think tanks, and come up with all the type of initiatives that can help our society and world. But unless our community members, similar to myself, are willing to say yes to this, then nothing moves forward. And I just want to kind of highlight what the main picture here is. When we talk about health literacy, we're talking about giving people an option, a new language to be able to talk and identify things in different ways. For example, Jessie mentioned that she has a little bit of a Persian to her name in terms of the cultural aspect of it. And if I were thinking about language in itself, the way that we communicate to each other, we can understand each other because we're communicating in English. The moment someone starts to use another language in this conversation today, I might be out of sorts. However, I have been learning Italian and Duolingo, so I'm getting up there a little bit. But that's the point here. You start to open up different areas in which you can start to identify and speak about things, communicate things, because we are focused on building literacy within children. Imagine doing that for the next 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, and how that then affects a generation over the course of time. We'll have a whole bunch of new kids, the generation alphas and beyond, that are able to talk about their health and their wellness in much more dynamic ways than we have ever been able to do in our previous generations. And that is the true preventative health approach, to one day not have a reason to talk about our health concerns because we've already gotten to the point where it is a part of our common structure and fabric of society.
For sure. I think that'd definitely be a good thought going forward. As we continue to look ahead, what are some of Movember's goals and upcoming projects within the Sport Health Initiative? Are there any partnerships that you're excited about right now?
Yeah, with our sports health initiative in itself, I mean, we recently kicked things off in October 2024. We are positioned as conveners. So we're not pretending to be the subject matter experts in sports. Of course, we do have a very vested interest and expertise when it comes to mental health and how we can start to bridge sports and mental health together. But as conveners, we're bringing together national sports partners, national researchers, and international researchers focused on masculine health, as well as, of course, sport health, and we're also bringing together government policy advocates. We've been able to successfully achieve this in October of this year, where in Calgary we had a nice shebang with the many organizations coming into that event, such as the Edmonton Oilers Foundation, Mental Health Commission of Canada, Canadian Mental Health Association, Canadian Sports Hall of Fame, and so on and so forth. And we're looking to, of course, build on this momentum by running another convening this upcoming February 2025, in which we're looking to bring together more sports partners from across the nation, researchers as well, and of course, mental health government advocates. The point of this is to continue to build thorough insights into this very interesting and new intersectionality of where mental health youth development starts to attach itself to sports, because this is uncharted territory. As we sit here as conveners, we're also being able to build the appropriate alignments and partnerships with our delivery partners to one day roll out our what's called their Movember Ahead of the Game project here in Canada, which is already applied in different markets throughout the world, such as Australia, the UK, and Ireland, to great success with large sporting institutions, one example being the AFL Australian Football League. And we would love to see this type of program come here in Canada, because it speaks to that gap that very much needs to be addressed. Of course, I say this with all heart and thoughtful intention, save our young men who are currently experiencing this crisis of ending their lives too soon.
That's fantastic. And I think it's so great that you're partnering with, major sports institutions. And like you mentioned, coaches have a huge influence on the youth today. I have a 5-year-old, he's going to be 6 soon, and he's involved in soccer and in swimming, and just seeing that connection with, the group and the coaches and his instructors is really shaping to who he's becoming at such a young age, and I see his development shining. To end off, I want to ask you both, what does men's health mean to you, and what are some suggestions you recommend to others who may not know how to navigate these types of conversations? So Ramond, I'll pass it off to you first.
Yeah. When I think about men's health, I actually bring it back to when I first started in this field of mental health. And when I was a very young counselor, I was doing counseling with people that was 2 times, 3 times my elders. And they would always give me a different perspective on what they thought men's health was. I've worked with every diverse demographic from across Canada. And from what I've learned from my own focus studies, as you could call them, and counseling individuals, I found that men's health is actually a very transient experience, in that the way that we perceive ourselves changes over the course of time. So it has a lot to do with our impression management of our own selves. But because of that, there is no consistency, and there's never been a stable to really stand on, except for this idea that men's health attaches itself to the common notions of protection, protection and providing. Now, that is not health. That's more so this condition of how we think we should act. But for some reason, this builds an idea in some people's minds that health, in that respect, creates this safe appearance of who we should be. When I think about mental health going forward in the future, how we reimagine our masculinities, how we reimagine ourselves in this world, mental health has a lot to do with being vulnerable, being open, being able to talk about what is actually going on, being willing to go to your doctor and say, hey, I'm not feeling right. I have this kink, I have this pain, and it's been here for the last 2 weeks. And I don't think I can just sleep it off. Being willing and open to actually challenge yourself to say that I need to make the next step to care for myself. Now, that's a very different approach from being that protector and provider stoic person, in the sense that, if we show weakness, then we've automatically failed in some case of a man. Now, that's the biggest thing here, to change the way that we actually think about being a man in today's world, so that we can actually be more healthy individuals, rather than continuing to, of course, mask our ideas of health.
Yeah, I think it's a great question as well. Everyone will have different views here. My personal view is somewhat simple, I guess, but we all have one life. It's best to take it serious when challenges do come up. I feel like most of us definitely take our health and general stability for granted, and it's hard to understand how serious things can be until you somewhat experience something like that firsthand. In terms of recommendations that I would generally offer to all men or men in your lives, and coming from more personal experience here, regularly check yourself. It takes next to no effort. And in the chance that you do find something that shouldn't be there, you'll have a much higher likelihood of dealing with it the sooner you address it. At the same time, if you're going through something and you have hopefully a good group of family or friends, try to just talk to them about what's going on, as hard as that may be, because odds are someone is probably holding back from sharing what they're going through as well. It really forces everyone just to be better about these things, in my view. And I'd say that somehow, adds on to what Ramond mentioned as well. Going forward, we need to be able to talk about this, or we're going to be holding a lot back.
Yeah, no, thank you both. I completely agree. And for me, it's really all about, mindfulness and self-care and self-compassion and connecting with the community and having a great support system. And to end off, Ramond, how can people get involved with Movember and support the initiatives you have planned?
Well, yes, this current 30 days that we're in the month of November, are the most important 30 days out of the 365-day calendar year, in that we rely a lot on the participation and fundraising from our fellow country members. So you are more than welcomed and more than encouraged to go to Movember.com, where you can sign up to our, of course, newsletters, where you'll have all the information that you need to get involved with Movember going forward. And if you are interested, if you are willing to, of course, lead the charge in your own small micro communities, then you're more than willing to sign up to start fundraising as well. And of course, I want to throw out and thank Andrew St. John, who is a current Marlboro as well too there at Fidelity, who's helped get things going in terms of forming our relationship together. He has a great amount of experience and, of course, fundraising along with other members of the team. So, of course, he's somebody internally that you're more than welcome to reach out to if you are interested in learning more.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ramond, for joining me, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. So join me next week. We are back on our mat for a yoga class designed to strengthen our core. So we'll see you then. Take care.